So the department requests a total of 70 positions and $4.6 million for fiscal year 16-17, and $4.5 million ongoing to implement Chapter 708 statutes of 2015, AB 1465, Gordon. So AB 1465 will authorize DMV to require proof of residency for all original driver's license identification.
Director, I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to ask for the Cliff Note version of your report.
So we're just asking for funding so that we can authorize, so beginning July 1st, 2016, we're going to require proof of residency. So that's what we're requiring the funding to do that in the DMV offices in order to attain, so we can have that on our record for being prepared for implementing Real ID.
Thank you. And I haven't been in a college class for a while, so I don't even know if Cliff Notes still exists. Do we have any additional? Thank you for understanding what I was asking for. Do we have any additional comments? All right.
Move the staff recommendation.
Is there public comment on this item? I have a motion and a second, but please.
Brian Ortiz with the ACLU. We're in strong opposition to the budget request to provide funding for Real ID compliance. Real ID is a problematic law that has been highly controversial and has little, if any, chances of implementation. Many states, including California, have rebelled against Real ID. In 2006, the legislature expressed concerns with the requirements of Real ID and required the DMV to seek authorization before implementing the act. In 2009, again, the California legislature expressed concerns with the requirement that driver's license photos be compatible with the facial recognition technologies. And it also required the DMV to seek approval before acquiring the cameras that are compatible with facial recognition technology. There's no real need for California to become compliant. DHS has repeatedly granted extensions in compliance deadlines to even the most recalcitrant states. As of January, only 22 states are compliant. The main penalty for noncompliance is theoretically DHS could bar the TSA from accepting licenses from noncompliant states for air travel. Noncompliant states represent 20% of the American population, so it's actually inconceivable that that would happen. There's a lot of problems with Real ID. Compliance would disproportionately affect the elderly and minorities. It would also increase chances of identity theft. Compliance would also mean loosening the privacy protections here in California in order for the DMV to participate in the federal DMV records database. Compliance with the Real ID Act would adversely affect California while providing no real benefit to the state. For these reasons, the ACLU opposes the budget request. Thanks.
Thank you very much. If there's no additional comments, oh, that's right. We have a motion in a second. Thank you. Looking for the motion, naturally. Aye.
Bigelow. Gordon. Aye. Patterson. Aye. Williams.
That item passes. Issue number 10 is our spring fiscal letter on driver's license issuance.
The department is requesting an additional $1.4 million in fiscal year 2016 for program costs related to the implementation of AB 60 ALEO, which commenced on January 2nd, 2015. So since we started this process of licensing and document agreement immigrants on January 2nd, 2015, we've issued over 700,000 driver's license through April 16, and we've seen approximately over 800,000 applicants. So as a result of this process, we have incurred additional workload regarding the secondary administrative review. If applicants don't have the right documents, they have to come to the DMV and meet with a staff person and provide additional documents, and this is an additional workload that was not planned for initially. So this finance letter requests funding for the positions associated with this review workload for AB 60 licenses, and also requests funding for the 4 driver's license processing centers in the field offices that were leased to handle the increased volume of customers due to implementation AB 60, and this will provide costs for the lease of the facilities through December 31st, 2016.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any public comment? I'm led to understand that if I make a motion on this item, there probably won't be a second. So we're just going to put this item over till later in the agenda. We'll see if we can establish a motion in a second at that time. So thank you for the presentation, and we will move on now to the California Air Resources Board presentation of issue number 11. Mr. Arambula, welcome, Assembly Member. Welcome to Subcommittee 3. You haven't been here for too long, but this is what it looks like. And so welcome, Mayor.
Thank
it looks
you.
like you're going to lead us off here. So
Yep,
go
very
right
good.
ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Member Patterson, appreciate your time today and the opportunity to update you on things that are happening in Fresno, our plans for moving forward, also the challenges we face as a community, and providing comments on the use of cap-and-trade funding to create the transformational sort of effect that communities like Fresno really require. I'm very pleased to be joined today by our newest member in the Assembly, Dr. Joaquin Arambula, and also pleased to testify before our other representative in Jim Patterson. So thanks so much to both of you. And we're also joined by a representative from the California Building Trades who would like to comment as well. I do have before you a presentation that I can move through very quickly, and that I knew you would appreciate that. A picture says 1,000 words, so we've provided some really important maps that can help you understand what we're trying to address as a community and also help us move quickly through the presentation. Much of my focus here today really will be on the sustainability of land use, water, transit, and transportation, but it's appropriate to start the conversation with an overview of our economy because that certainly makes things move in the right direction. So if you go to just the opening slides, very high level, what's happening in the economy and workforce development in the greater Fresno region. Our unemployment rate is still much too high at 10.5% in February of 2016, but it has been reduced dramatically since 2011. Our unemployment at that time was 18%. If you look at the history of unemployment in the greater Fresno region over the last 30 years, on only 3 occasions has the unemployment rate dropped below double digits. So clearly we have some chronic economic conditions that need to be addressed. But we do have good news on our economic front. Exports are up 2.5 times the national average. In July of last year, the Progressive Policy Institute released a report highlighting tech job-creating cities in California, with Fresno being the 3rd best performing city when it comes to tech job creation. Our professional service sector has also seen tremendous increase in job growth. Overall, in 2014, we had a banner year with a 4.5% growth rate. And we've been doing everything possible to help those who are most vulnerable and out on our streets. We've seen a 48% reduction in chronic homelessness in the last 7 years in Fresno. So all that means that we're moving things in the right direction, but we still have a long way to go. In considering the challenges we face from a land use, a water, and a transportation standpoint, this is really the meat of the presentation that I wanted to walk you through. So if you flip to the slide that shows Fresno's growth, it's typical of all San Joaquin Valley urban centers. It shows what our city looked like for the first 50 years of its existence. From 1895 to 1945, everything in light blue and blue is depicted on the slide that you see. So it was a modest footprint before World War II. If you turn the page, you'll see the next slide shows everything in red that happened in the next 65 years. So roughly the same period of time, our physical footprint really, really expanded. And everything in red is what has been developed since World War II. The more recent development is in the darker red. There are many positive things that we could point to that have resulted from this form of development, but there are also some very serious negative and unintended consequences that we now seek to address, including the concentration of poverty, the high levels of pollution that we see, and the overdrafting of our water basin. So if you go to the next slide, everything in yellow and red shows neighborhood census tracts that are either high poverty or extreme poverty. Unfortunately, Fresno has the second highest concentration of poverty of any other large city in the United States. 92% of the poor in Fresno live in a high poverty or an extreme poverty neighborhood. So this is very definitely a connection back to our land use pattern and not taking careful steps to make sure that we maintained healthy mixed income neighborhoods over time. So this is certainly one of the biggest challenges we face as a community. But there have also been very negative consequences from a pollution standpoint. If you know the geography of the San Joaquin Valley, it's a great big bowl in the middle of the state. Pollution gets stuck there, the dispersion rate is very low, and it's difficult to move that pollution out. So as a result, you see on the next slide a snapshot of what CalEnviro Screen 2 shows us, and looking at the census tracts that are both low income as well as have the most various sources of pollution. The following slide actually ranks by Assembly and Senate districts the most disadvantaged communities in California. So we took CalEnviro Screen data, we looked at every census tract in California, and certainly we know there are hard-hit communities and neighborhoods all across our state. But the reality is you will not find the concentration and the volume of census tracts that are in the 95th percentile according to CalEnviro Screen 2, like you do in Assembly District 31, which is largely the city of Fresno. So by looking at the number of census tracts that meet the criteria for 95th percent of CalEnviro Screen 2, you'll see that 50% of the census tracts in 8031, 50% are in the 95th percentile. The second worst performing assembly district is 8051 with 29%. So almost by a measure of 2 do we see a higher concentration of low income and polluted communities. So this is clearly our challenge, and it is the big boulder that we've been pushing uphill in Fresno. I'm very pleased to say that I'm not just here to tell you about the misery index in Fresno. We've actually been hard at work with solutions and bringing forward things that we have done at the local level to begin to move the needle in the right direction. If you look at the next slide, Fresno's 20-year growth plan, there are just some highlights on that map that really depict the major components of our strategy to both improve our climate as well as revitalize the inner city of Fresno. And it breaks down to really 4 big pieces. Number 1, downtown. Everything in blue, our pre-World War II historic part of our city, is the major focus of our 20-year growth plan. Number 2, 3 major transit corridors. What you see in the pink and dark pink and purple are all transit corridors that represent places where we're now overlaying bus rapid transit and really improving transit ridership, and then accompanying land use that supports higher densities, better walkability, and TOD sorts of development. Number 3, an infill opportunity zone. Everything you see in the buff color really represents neighborhoods today that are either on the bubble or distressed or still remain healthy today. So that really is the heart of our city and represents the densest part of our population. So we've created an infill opportunity zone to attempt to make it easier to invite private investment back into these parts of our city. And then lastly, employment, of course, drives everything. Everything in gray is our industrial land that's been set aside for job creation and really driving the employment rate in the right direction. Just flipping forward quickly, if we are successful in implementing this plan, the measures that we'll see are quite dramatic and, in fact, the best performing that you'll find anywhere in the San Joaquin Valley. So our 20-year plan, if successfully implemented, will reduce greenhouse gases by 40% compared to our status quo development pattern. So we're clearly a part of the state's climate solution and cannot be left out of the equation. And at the same time, we see a tremendous increase in interest in investing back in the urban core based on this plan that we've adopted. But if you're like me, plans that are not implemented mean absolutely nothing. So this plan was adopted in December of 2014. The early steps that we've taken to begin implementing it include, number 1, completely rewriting our development code that literally got in the way of the sort of investment that we want to see in our inner city. It was quite literally illegal to do a mixed-use development along a transit corridor in the city of Fresno, even though it's something that everyone would agree that we want to see. So we deregulated our land use. We made it possible to do the things we want to see and got a new development code adopted at the end of 2014, or pardon me, end of 2015. And then we said, you know what, let's take it a step further. Let's actually rezone the entire city. So that was done on February 4th of this year, and now our zoning, our local regulations, and our land use policy are all consistent with the implementation of this plan. In other words, we've done everything we can do and everything within our local power to make sure there are no regulatory hurdles to achieving the goals that we have for our community. The other thing that we can do as a local city is make sure that the infrastructure dollars that we have line up in support of implementing this plan. And that's precisely what we've done, particularly as it relates to water and transit and transportation. So if you look at the next slide, and this is just the last bit of misery that I'll share with you here today. So the King Subbasin that we're a part of is the 17th most overdrafted water basin out of the 515 in California. So we're very highly ranked in terms of being a high priority for getting off our groundwater. There was actually a term of art in the greater Fresno area called the cone of depression that is referred to. That is what we call our groundwater, our aquifer. And it refers to the fact that over a number of years we've sucked the groundwater out. That means there's less water for agriculture, less water for other priorities in the area. However, we actually have rights and access to surface water entitlements that far exceed what we need as a community. We've just not had the infrastructure to take that water, clean it, treat it, and use it instead of pulling it up out of the ground. So that is changed thanks to the support of our city council. We passed a rate plan that's enabling the construction of $620 million of water infrastructure over the next 3 years. When completed and when we're on our surface water treatment plant instead of groundwater, we'll actually be a net positive and a donor back to the aquifer. Today, we're taking out almost 70,000 acre-feet of water a year. We will be to the point where we're actually depositing 14,000 acre-feet of water a year when we implement this infrastructure, and we'll actually be in a position to recharge that aquifer. So this has been a major focus of ours as well. And then lastly, transit and transportation. So high-speed rail, ground zero is Fresno. Construction is underway. While our revitalization plans have been tailored to both options, if high-speed rail happens, if it doesn't, as the project has continued to move forward, we see this as a huge opportunity to take advantage of. And so much of our focus is around what can we do to leverage the major investment of the high-speed rail station in our downtown area, and it's a big focus for additional infrastructure and housing. In addition to that, our local transit plans, as I mentioned before, include bus rapid transit, which has been funded by a $40 million federal grant, and construction will start on that in June of this year and be operating by early 2018. So last thing I want to just comment on a bit, and then I'll ask my colleagues here to join in as well. So where are we going? Timing is everything on the successful implementation of this plan. If we allow sort of a continued status quo type of development in and all around the Fresno area, we will miss the opportunity to concentrate investment in inner city Fresno where we need it the most. So we know that the first 5 years of implementation of our plan are absolutely critical. In fact, we're looking at $1 billion investment plan for climate and revitalization projects in the city of Fresno, 2/3 of which are funded, mostly by local sources and with some federal funds as well. About 1/3 of the dollars we need are still lacking, and we would argue that cap and trade dollars, particularly disadvantaged communities programs, should be focused on cities like Fresno. Just a few comments on a policy framework for the best use of those dollars for disadvantaged communities. Number one, we believe strongly that you should target disadvantaged communities that have already done the comprehensive land use, transportation, and water planning that we've done in the city of Fresno. Number two, we strongly believe that these dollars should be focused on disadvantaged communities that are shovel-ready. We all want to move the needle. We want to see results from these dollars, and you'll find no more eager or hungrier city than the city of Fresno to see our conditions on the ground change. So we know that being shovel-ready is very, very important, and we are in Fresno. Number three, we believe that you should allow multi-year funding requests, and that's very different from a continuous appropriation. But if we can look at a multi-year request, it means less money each year to make room for as many communities as possible, and allows us to lock in and commit to infrastructure projects we know we're going to be able to deliver, and that frankly and candidly take several years anyway to absorb the capital and deploy it in the way that gets the most investment. So we strongly recommend multi-year sorts of approaches. And then lastly, for some portion of the cap and trade funding, we strongly recommend that there be a transformational or a catalytic sort of view of being able to use dollars across program lines for communities such as ours that are the most disadvantaged, that are shovel-ready, that have done comprehensive planning, for communities to bring forward their recommendation of projects and look at things from an outcome standpoint and allow some flexibility with the dollars instead of just going from a program by program, silo by silo sort of approach with these dollars. So with that, let me thank you for your time and ask my colleagues to comment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Bloom and Assemblymember Patterson, for having us here. I'd like to start by acknowledging that it's Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with each and every one of you. Today I'm here to advocate for the Fresno Climate and Revitalization Plan, but before I begin, I want to tell you who I am and where I come from. I come from very humble roots. I was born in a city called Delano during the middle of a farm worker movement. I moved to just north of downtown Fresno when I was 6 years old in what many of you would call disadvantaged communities or the wrong side of the tracks. I was a Medi-Cal kid. I was a Head Start kid. I went to public schools in Fresno. I understand the needs of our communities, and I have spent the last decade of my life working as an emergency room doctor, taking care of everyone who comes through my doors. I know that our community is suffering and that we are getting left behind. I believe that it's time for us to start to share in the prosperity of the rest of the state and to start to show us that there's economic benefits to doing climate change, specifically looking at our project and our plan. It's a wonderful vision for where we can go. I look at our air quality, which is the worst in the nation. When I'm taking care of patients who are coming through my emergency department, I'm looking at kids who can't breathe. I'm looking at their parents who are trying to just get some answers. And I don't have great answers for them other than to say, maybe it's time for you to leave our valley. But what I believe is that I am so proud of where I come from and what we do in our valley that I want to change our climate. And I believe we need a strategy. We need a long-term plan for us to see how we are going to continue to be viable in the Central Valley and not get left behind with the rest of the state. I am concerned that we have the highest areas of dense, disadvantaged communities in our state. I want to really focus on that number. I am a scientist by training. I believe in metrics and analytics, and under every measure that we have, Fresno is the most disadvantaged community in our state. And when we're looking at cap and trade dollars, we need to start evaluating, if we're going to be giving those dollars, why aren't we targeting areas that have the greatest needs? We have a strong plan that will help us to put us on the right path for the next decade or two. We need to start building those pathways to prosperity, and I am proud to sit here with the building trades to say that there is a pathway for us to get out of poverty. And it's tying ourselves to start building things again. It's tying ourselves to believing in high-speed rail and believing in a vision that downtown Fresno can be the hub for our state. I look at Fresno, and we are along the spine of our state. We currently have two of the busiest traffic corridors in 99 and I-5. We must be part of the solution to fix our climate problems in the state, and we are attempting to come to the table with a plan that will address just those issues today. I am looking for a proof of concept to show that climate change can make impactful, catalytic economic investments in our communities in the poorest parts of the state. Because if we can do it in Fresno, we can do it anywhere throughout the remainder of our state, and showing us and proving to everyone that this concept works, that our plan can bring people together, put people back to work, create a better climate, and use our climate change dollars, cap and trade dollars, in an effective way. I want to make sure that those economic successes stay within our state. By partnering and working with the building trades, I believe by funding the building trades, we are then able to keep those dollars locally. by having local hire agreements, by us actually being able to make sure that those dollars stay within our communities is imperative for our long-term success. The time for transformative investments that produce sustainable growth with more transit, walking, and biking is now. The time to make those changes is to start creating it in the areas that need it the most. I ran on this agenda, and I intend to advocate for some of the same prosperity that we see through the remainder of the state to come back to the community that I was born and raised in, that I love, and that I fight for each and every day. I thank you guys for your time and your consideration on this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council, proud to stand here in support of this comprehensive plan. When the State Building Trades supported a lot of the climate change policies and sustainable development policies that the legislature has supported, the governors have signed, we envisioned this particular plan. We envisioned also the partnership with local government, assembly members, state legislatures, and senators that was just spoken of here, where you look at land use, water use, transportation, all of it mixed in with vertical development to ensure that people can reside where they actually work. But that investment also does not leave the local construction workers behind. Local construction workers that also have kids going to school in those areas, that have access to maybe poor water, poor air quality, and not enough job opportunities, so that when they do exit high school and perhaps go to a higher university, there's not much economic opportunity, so they have to actually migrate to other areas out of the Fresno area. We would like to see that economic benefit stay there. And with this partnership that we speak of here with the City of Fresno, with the Assembly member, we're very proud of. We know that the local hire agreements will trigger opportunities for the most disadvantaged communities. We're going to train those workers. We're going to put them in jobs, not only building this land use and improving their communities, but also putting them to work on some of the energy policies as well that the state has already promoted, such as the Renewable Portfolio Standard. That's another great opportunity that exists in the Central Valley. It should not be lost that the Central Valley is basically embodying the comprehensive solution that the state has envisioned when it passed these climate change policies. So for those reasons, we are really proud to stand here with them and urge your support of this comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the very impressive presentation. I really appreciate it, all three of you. Are there any questions? Mr. Williams.
So one of the communities in my district has had a similar frustration in trying to make sure that the downtown is revitalized. It is Oxnard. And part of it is a planning problem, right? They put a huge amount of redevelopment money downtown, but it didn't work. It didn't get off the ground because they kept on approving development north and south of the core. And so I guess one of my questions is, if the state were to make an investment like this, how can we be assured that the city and the county would respect urban growth boundaries or enact an urban growth boundary ordinance so that you're not working against yourself in what developments are approved outside of the core?
Yeah, thank you. I'll be happy to jump in on that, Member Williams. Exactly similar circumstances in the Fresno area, so I can speak on behalf of the city of Fresno. I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the county, but in our general plan, for the first time, we did not expand our sphere of influence. Every other time we've updated our general plan, we saw continued expansions of our sphere. So number one, we made sure that policy was in place. And then number two, we adopted policy in the plan that requires 50% of new investment and growth during the life of this plan has to happen within infill areas. And so we've taken an aggressive posture with our local policy. To date, the county has not allowed growth to a great extent in unincorporated parts of the county. We certainly see proposals moving along, and it's really a question mark for us as to whether or not the county is going to continue to support growth outside of cities or if they're going to direct that growth back to cities. And of course, we would support the growth happening within cities where the planning is done and the infrastructure is in place. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act really changes everything for the central San Joaquin Valley, a major part of the state that is largely unplumbed. And so what used to be possible in the past with just dropping wells and doing growth outside of cities is, I think, going to be much more difficult in the future. And so I think that's also a limiting factor. But I would share your assessment and agree with those sorts of policies need to be worked through very carefully with the county and the surrounding jurisdictions to make sure that, that we're all pulling on the same end of the rope.
Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I just a little bit of housekeeping. This is a matter that will hold over.
We're open.
My understanding is this has been sort of the manner in which we've done the cap and trade kind of decisions and all. So I was going to ask for a motion to move, but we, with respect to the chair. Number two, I just want to thank you for coming and thank you for the presentation. Also to welcome our new member. Got some of the cutest kids I have ever seen in my life. I just don't.
Bias.
I know. But I want to go on record that when it does come before me, I want to support this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We have a lot of work to do on our cap and trade dollars. They are a limited resource. They're a diminishing resource over time. We have to take all of that into consideration, and of course, multiple demands on those funds. But I really do appreciate the depth of the presentation here today, and I think it helps us very much in focusing our attention on disadvantaged communities, which is not to say we haven't been focused on those communities. It has been both legislatively and a consideration of the subcommittee, an ongoing concern. And I think that your focus on both the greenhouse gas reduction and water issues, which come together in your area very dramatically, along with the most dramatic amount of poverty in the state of California, really is compelling. So thank you very much again for the presentations. We will hold this item open and move on to our next item.
Thank you both. If I could leave you with one last thought. Partisanship
I'll
never came...
accord you that privilege, yes.
Thank you. Partisanship never came up in this discussion with the mayor and I, and it's nice when we can put our differences aside and work towards something that benefits our communities. It's important for us to start adding and working together so we can get multiplicative effects. Let's stop subtracting and dividing from each other, but how can we make each other better? And this is a great partnership for our community, and thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. And we've had, I believe it's 3 successive mayors of Fresno weigh in on this as well, which is unique to this subcommittee.